the Bolivian interior minister, known as Minister for Cocaine, acting as an advisor. Top CIA whistleblower Victor Marchetti and British editor Francis Stoner Saunders then documented how the American oligarchs founded the CIA in 1947 and made its director overseer of the other 14-plus intelligence agencies. Reports of the numbers of Nazis saved by the OSS and CIA in Latin America ranged from 9,000 to what a German journalist, Herbert John, reported as 50,000. Did they aid the CIA in cocaine trafficking?
When the Nazis arrived in South America, 50,000 after the war, they set up a network. They taught the police, the military, security forces, how to enrich themselves. And Barbie was the man in Bolivia.
60 Minutes covered how the former head of the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, exposed the CIA's drug trafficking.
The head of the DEA at the time, Robert Bonner, said that a ton of pure cocaine worth hundreds of millions of dollars had been smuggled into the United States. And he blamed the CIA.
James Bradley's book, The Imperial Cruise, supported that the oligarchs also had continued their opium shipping well into the 1900s and beyond. They had further added more of the pharmaceutical business in the 1900s. Martin Lee and Bruce.
No, not now.
Yeah, dude, that doesn't look good.
I know what to do.
What's that?
I'm going to cashnetusa.com. I can apply minutes, and if approved, I can have the money as soon as the same business day.
Oh, nice save.
Saving the day is easy. With CashNet USA.
When you need money fast, be the hero. Go to cashnetusa.com to apply for the money you need now.
Attention Medicare beneficiaries. If you have or are eligible for Medicaid, please listen closely. You may be eligible for a Medicare Advantage plan from WellCare with a $0 or low monthly plan premium. Call now. We can answer your questions and help you enroll over the phone. WellCare provides access to essential benefits that go beyond original Medicare, such as dental, vision, hearing, and $0 or low prescription drug copays with free home delivery, free over-the-counter healthcare items, free fitness benefits, WellCare's telehealth services, including online doctor visits, Twill, a digital mental health and social support resource, plus extra benefits including the WellCare Spendables debit card, which you can use for over-the-counter health items. WellCare is contracted with Medicare to provide plans that may be right for you. Call 844-690-3035. Now, that's 844-690-3035.
Schlane's book, Acid Dreams, along with Professor Al McCoy's A Question of Torture and former Carter Presidential Administration official Hank Albarelli, detailed how Operation Paperclip brought Nazi scientists who had tested mescaline on Jewish prisoners into the U.S. to work for Project MK-Ultra and other science programs. This Anthropology Today article cited a declassified 1963 CIA report summarizing various MK-Ultra projects for control of human behavior, including radiation, electroshock, and chemical agents like LSD and DMT. The Anthropology Today article also reported that the extent of covert CIA funding of social science research during the 1950s and 1960s was extraordinary. This funding coincided with the Big Three: Ford, Rockefeller, and Carnegie. The CIA Project MK-Ultra, whose name was changed to MK Search in 1964, secretly funded about 45 top American universities, 50 hospitals, and 50 prisons through an MK-Ultra front group, the Human Ecology Fund, out of Cornell University Medical School. Many of the funding recipients can be seen here. Professors at Harvard, Columbia, Stanford, and Johns Hopkins were among these recipients. Some of this research paid volunteers to participate in psilocybin, psychedelic mushroom, and LSD experiments. The oligarchs hired Dr. Sidney Gottlieb as director of the CIA's Project MK Ultra. England's The Daily Mail compared him with James Bond's supervisor, Q, which shows how movies glamorize barbaric spies. Dr. Gottlieb had a clubfoot, but got around globally. CIA documents cited in a documentary by ABC News confirmed that Gottlieb carried a stash of acid overseas on a number of occasions to dose foreign diplomats, statesmen, along with promising leftist artists and writers. Psych professor Timothy Leary headed the CIA's Human Ecology Fund experiments at Harvard University until Harvard kicked out Leary and his acid-addled egghead professorial sidekicks, Richard Alpert and Ralph Metzner, in 1963. William and Margaret Mellon Hitchcock of Mellon Bank and Gulf oil-owning families quickly entered the scene. The Mellon Hitchcocks had family in top U.S. intelligence posts. They funded a new acid promotion group for Leary, Metzner, and Alpert, the International Federation for Internal Freedom, IFIF. IFIF instantly had headquarters in Boston, New York, Los Angeles, and even one near Acapulco in Mexico. William Mellon Hitchcock had a 38-room mansion on his 2,300-acre estate an hour north of New York City, which Leary, Metzner, and Alpert rented out very cheaply for the next 5 years. MK Ultra agents Dr. Humphrey Osmond, Captain Al Hubbard, Max, Dr. Feelgood Jacobson, and NASA scientist Steve Groff joined them. Leary later admitted that from 1962 onwards, he knowingly worked for the CIA. Spicologist Leary's Millbrook Mansion was psychedelic central for the whole East Coast. The team of spies lured many from New York City up to the constant Millbrook party and initiated them to acid. Left-wing writer and publisher Paul Krasner said that a pot-bellied Brit named Michael Hollingshead, reported as a propaganda agent, guided him on an acid trip that included uncontrollable laughing for an hour that he couldn't stop. He laughed so hard that he threw up. Good times. Ralph Metzner described people saying they were seeing things not there and walking into doors or furniture. Mind expansion at its best. Another Millbrook visitor named Arthur Kleps swore that Potbelly Hollingshead placed a few thousand micrograms of pure Sandoz acid in some brandy by his bed. Kleps ended up founding an organization he named the Neo-American Boohoo Church in 1966. Former Harvard egghead Rich Alpert kept his keen analytical judgment when on one acid trip he thought he might be able to fly. He jumped out a second-floor window and broke his leg. While the opium-shipping oligarchs were having CIA agents promote psychedelics on American masses, they never took their eyes off the top cash crop prize of poppy fields. First, they focused on the Vietnam area, called the Golden Triangle for poppy fields. They influenced politicians to support the second-longest American war starting in the 1960s. Professor Al McCoy's book, The Politics of Heroin, detailed U.S. intelligence's vast opium and heroin trafficking from Vietnam to the U.S. during the Vietnam War. Frontline's Judy Woodruff revealed a U.S. intelligence agent's report attesting to their bringing heroin into the U.S. during the Vietnam War.
But in 1972, a U.S. intelligence agent in Southeast Asia sent a secret field report to Customs. The CIA was, in fact, facilitating the movement of opiates to the U.S. They steadfastly hid behind the shield of secrecy and said that all was done in the interest of national security. End quote.
Heroin addiction and overdoses were sent soaring in the U.S., as shown in this chart. As this picture shows, heroin produced a huge boost in the American stock market, as dirty profits from heroin sales were laundered through profit margins of banks and other stock corporations. Stockbrokers celebrated nationwide when large shipments of heroin came into the U.S., as may have been implied here in The Wolf of Wall Street. The four top political icons of the 1960s, JFK, RFK, MLK, and Malcolm X, were actively trying to end the Vietnam War. President John F. Kennedy had an apparent political sea change while in office and ended up declaring an end to sending troops to Vietnam. He also tried to close down the CIA's Operation MK Ultra, firing the CIA director and his assistant who helped run it.
We would expect to withdraw 1,000 men from South Vietnam before the end of the year. If we were able to do that, that will be our scheduling.
A policy was put into place to end the U.S. involvement in Vietnam, and a formal presidential decision was taken in October of 1963 that would, if implemented, have caused a full pullout of U.S. forces from Vietnam by the end of 1965.
New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison announced on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson his findings about the CIA's success at protecting the American oligarchs' opium trafficking interests.
At Dealey Plaza, there were 10 men arrested, and this has been kept secret for more than 4 years. Here are the pictures of 5 of them being arrested, and they've never been shown before. Several of these men arrested have been connected by our office with a Central Intelligence Agency of the United States government. I am trying to tell you that there is no question as a result of our investigation that an element of the Central Intelligence Agency of our country killed John Kennedy, and that the present administration is concealing the facts. There is no question about it at all.
Robert Kennedy Jr. talked with interviewer Russell Brand about his uncle's assassination. Here's Robert Kennedy Jr. telling of being called home from school at 9 years old because of his uncle's death in November of 1963.
And I arrived at the same time John McComb arrived at my house, who was the director of the CIA at that time. And my father brought him for a walk in the yard and said the same thing to him. Was it the CIA who did this to Jack? So, my father's first instinct, which was a good instinct, it turns out, was that the CIA had killed his brother.
In June of 1968, Senator Robert F. Kennedy won the decisive California presidential primary, marking the likelihood of his winning the Democratic nomination and then gaining the presidency. At the location of his Los Angeles celebration that election night, gunman Sirhan Sirhan fired multiple times at Senator Kennedy. A security guard just behind Kennedy also fired his gun. Decades later, a Harvard Medical School hypnosis expert analyzed Sirhan and said he had conducted the assassination while in a hypnotic state.
We came to conclusion that the muzzle distance would be a 1 inch from the right ear.
Now, how far was Sirhan from Senator Kennedy at the time?
I would say approximately from 3 to 6 feet.
Where was this guard who was firing his gun?
He was standing directly to the side and back of Kennedy.
A CIA hypnotist revealed his use of drugs to help create unknowing assassins.
So the use of long-term hypnotic suggestion, probably drugs, whatever, and so on. Under these situations where you have all this going for you, yes, you can brainwash a person to do just about anything.
Brian reportedly bragged to 2 prostitutes who serviced him regularly that he had, in fact, hypnotized Sirhan.
Back in the UK, the Beatles' founding singer got involuntarily dosed with LSD in their coffee by the dentist of fellow Beatle George Harrison. The dentist had the 2 Beatles and their partners over for dinner and dosing in 1965. A.E. Hotchner, a former editor for Ernest Hemingway, wrote the book Blown Away. Hotchner wrote that at the start of 1965, MK Ultra Assistant Director Rob Lashbrook had come to London with loads of acid and CIA agents to get acid in as many musicians' hands as possible. In 1966, top American musician David Van Cortlandt Crosby invited the Beatles to a party when they were playing in Los Angeles. Crosby's family was so wealthy that they had New York City's 3rd largest park named after the family's former estate on 1,100 acres in the Bronx. At that party with the Beatles, Crosby and others convinced Lennon and Harrison to trip again, this time with their drummer, Ringo Starr. In 1967, an undercover FBI and MI5 agent would convince Rolling Stones singer Mick Jagger to try his first hit of acid. Late author Dave McGowan wrote the book Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, Laurel Canyon, Covert Ops, and the Dark Heart of the Hippie Dream. McGowan said David Van Cortlandt Crosby and many American musicians like him had little talent before the oligarchs made them instant stars in the Laurel Canyon area of Los Angeles in the 1960s. McGowan had found that Crosby's father was military intelligence officer Major Floyd Delafield Crosby, and that most of these Laurel Canyon rock stars also had military families. The oligarchs, including Barbara Sears Rockefeller's first cousin Vito Paulekas, appeared to pay for a bevy of teen girls and some guys to come to these musicians' first shows. Paulekas taught dance classes in Laurel Canyon. Paulekas, his dancers, and these musicians lured other musicians and actors to their Laurel Canyon homes with regular sex and drug parties from 1966 onwards. Paulekas instructed and even housed many of these groupies. They attended the parties and helped turn many on to acid, heroin, cocaine, and other drugs. McGowan's book and the book Drugs as Weapons Against Us present evidence that this whole scene was linked to the CIA's MK-Ultra program. U.S. intelligence already had hundreds of agents in Laurel Canyon, working in the Air Force's secret Lookout Mountain film studio there, making a reported 19,000 classified motion pictures. 250 producers, directors, technicians, and actors, both civilian and military, all had top security clearances or signed confidentiality agreements about their work. These included Hollywood's biggest names. While David Crosby may have held the most sex and drug parties in Laurel Canyon, Papa John Phillips also hosted regular sex and drug parties. Before starting the top-selling band, the Mamas and the Papas, Phillips had been in the Naval Academy, with a dad who was a Marine Corps officer. He then played folk music in New York. When Papa John was 27, he left his first wife, aristocratic Susan Adams, a direct descendant of President John Adams. Attendees of Papa John Phillips' drug orgy parties included top Hollywood stars and musicians, along with Charles Manson and his followers. Papa John had also traveled north to act as the father of San Francisco's Summer of Love in 1967, when he invited millions to the area with the hit song he wrote for his friend Scott McKenzie about coming to the acid-saturated San Francisco. Be sure to wear flowers in your hair. Mackenzie Phillips.
Glorious. For a limited time, get a free upgrade to Home Internet Plus. Just $50 a month.
Attention Medicare beneficiaries. If you have or are eligible for Medicaid, please listen closely. You may be eligible for a Medicare Advantage plan from WellCare with a $0 or low monthly plan premium. Call now. We can answer your questions and help you enroll over the phone. WellCare provides access to essential benefits that go beyond original Medicare, such as dental, vision, hearing, and $0 or low prescription drug copays with free home delivery, free over-the-counter healthcare items, free fitness benefits, WellCare's telehealth services, including online doctor visits, Twill, a digital mental health and social support resource, plus extra benefits including the WellCare Spendables debit card, which you can use for over-the-counter health items. WellCare is contracted with Medicare to provide plans that may be right for you. Call 844-690-3035. Now, that's 844-690-3035.
Phillips said her Papa John introduced her to drugs when she was the age of 11 by injecting her with cocaine, like any good dad would. He was America's papa. When Mackenzie was getting married in 1979, John apparently didn't want to give away the bride. Instead, he gave her drugs and alcohol the night before the ceremony. Mackenzie said this is when she was first raped by her father in a hotel room when she was 18 while passed out after a drug binge. He should have written a song about it. Partying with Dad. Be sure to wear a chastity belt. Here's CNN's Larry King interviewing Mackenzie.
All I remember is arriving in the room, getting high. I was in the act of having sex with my father.
What did you think?
What did I think?
Yeah.
I thought, how did this happen? How did I end up here?
All the leaves are brown, and the sky is gray, and I'm screwing my daughter before her wedding day.
Mackenzie said she then had a, quote, consensual incestuous relationship with her dad for 10 years, ending it only when she got pregnant, fearing the baby was his, and aborted it. Still, for a while there, it must have been very exciting for Papa John that his daughter might be having his child and grandchild at the same time. But let's get back to that idyllic 1960s music scene in Los Angeles. The third biggest Laurel Canyon drug orgy party host, Frank Zappa, had grown up next to the MK Ultra collaborating Edgewood Arsenal complex where his father worked in U.S. chemical warfare research and human mind control experimentation. Pamela DeBar, who wrote the popular groupie memoir With the Band, told rock historian Barney Hoskins about attending these Laurel Canyon sex and drug parties. DeBar said Rockefeller cousin Vito Palekas and Zappa never got high. They were both ringmasters who always wanted to be in control. So were the teen girl orgies only for fun, drugging celebrities to promote drugs to the world, blackmail, or all of the above? U.S. intelligence appeared to also use it for creating drugged and traumatized victim assets for future operations, to be discussed more later. By 1970, Eric Burden and the Animals had moved into Frank Zappa's party house, called the Log Cabin. Dave McGowan said that the cabin had by then become a mandatory stop for all visiting British invasion bands. A possible CIA and British Tavistock Institute strategy appeared of introducing British bands to acid and other drugs. This is further supported by the fact that in the early to mid-1960s, several military officers manipulated writer Ken Kesey to form a group called the Merry Pranksters in the San Francisco Bay Area. The pranksters toured the U.S. and Canada, promoting acid, speed, and other drugs in their psychedelic bus. They also held dozens of acid festivals attended by CIA scientists and others in U.S.